This is about the evolution of the angelic and the human. What's fascinating with this is that we are born to where angels evolve. They are born to where we evolve. When an angel is just incepted from God, just sparked from the divine, they are in absolute awareness of God. We are like that too when we're born as an infant, but when the veil drops, we, of course, don't walk around in God consciousness unless we're JR, and other than that, we don't. So an angel is born with absolute awareness of God. They're not aware of other. When we are born, we are aware of other. We're aware of mom, dad. We are aware of co-creatorship. We have free choice. There we go. When a human is born, of course, well, this is more accurate to say, when the veil drops, we're not aware of God. We're not aware that we're not aware we are the Lord, and we're walking around in that consciousness. We do have awareness of other, awareness of free choice, awareness that we can choose to love, we cannot. We can choose to murder somebody, we cannot. We have free choice. An angel, when they're born, they don't have that awareness. They are one with God's will. There is no choice. Now, how many times do we go, I would do the best thing if God would just descend and tell me what to do? That's often someone who's had a lot of incarnations in the angelic. To find the will of God is more challenging for us here because we're not born in that like an angel is. Now, as a human evolves, we, of course, gain more awareness of God, less awareness of other, less awareness of our choices outside of God's will, until we evolve to co-creatorship with God. We are one with God. We make choices in alignment with Spirit to the point where it's Spirit making the choices through us, where there is no choice, truly. It's God choosing itself freely. As an angel evolves, now they're born in that, no other choice. As an angel evolves, they do have awareness of other. They do develop an awareness of choice. Now that's a dramatic thing for an angel. Wow, I can choose something besides the will of God. Absolutely. And what will you choose? So they evolved to the same place, co-creatorship with the Lord. So this is the human opportunity. Now, here's the surprising thing. We tend to think angels are exotic and mystical and cool. Well, actually, they're very ordinary. We're the exotic, mystical, cool people, okay? Beings. There's a lot more of them than there is of us. This is kind of a simple way to show that. And this is, the percentages, I don't know, 80, 20, 85, 15, I don't know exactly, but there's a lot more of them. There's a permeability here, meaning we can certainly be born, have a lot of incarnations in the angelic, and then have some in the human, go back and forth. We can also very much be aware of this realm while we're here. Multidimensional consciousness, like we can be aware of the other realms while we're here. In the beginning, it may feel like you're being stretched out to be aware of that and be here in these bodies, and that can keep going to just as you're aware of the other dimensions where it's just a shifting of focus. So the angels want to serve you. They want to participate. Look, see how much, how JR said this is so many souls line up to be here, and we're like, what? Are you kidding? Why? Is that like poor taste? But it's really true because of this incredible opportunity to co-create with God, to choose as God chooses, to have this experience is rarefied and muchly to be desired because you grow so exponentially here. So the angels want to participate in the human experience. For those of you in the last workshop, we talked a little bit more about the differences, but there is far less stability here, which causes far greater creativity. They want that experience. So it's just, when it's the highest good to ask them to step in, there's legions of them to do that, and very high ones. What we have here is our pal Lucifer. Now, Lucifer, of course, if you heard firstborn son of God, the bright, shining one, Lucifer was actually very beautiful. Lucifer was in charge of these angels here. Now, Lucifer did not fall in the beginning. Lucifer was, again, the bright, shining one. And these were his great archangels. The great archangels would be, now there's angels above them, which we would call the unnameable ones. But the great archangels would be like Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, the ones you hear about. Under that was archangels, and then the vast majority were angels. Now, it's a bit of a misrepresentation because there's no hierarchy in the angelic kingdom. They don't say, oh, this one is higher, this one is lower. It's just a different function. Again, they have that awareness of God consciousness. It's all God. But for the purposes of the job differentiation, this is what we're showing. Now, there's other angels, many, many other angels. This is about a third of them, that were not under Lucifer. That's the pure ones. Now, Lucifer was in charge of manifest creation, the earth experienced. If you want to say anything, please jump in.
You can say that it wasn't really working before you move on. So what happened is creation was working under Lucifer, was basically bogging down, and souls were getting caught in this level and weren't moving forward. Progression wasn't happening according to the original intent of the Spirit of God when this was allowed design. And Lucifer really was really given dominion. But when it was seen that it wasn't really working, another option was suggested out of the spirit world. And more than suggested, it was decided that another way of doing karma, another way of evolving would be brought forward for mankind and for humankind and for the experience of creation. And this other plan is something we'll talk about in the slideshow, but that we could say then would be then the plan that we relate to as coming under the Christ. And when this was brought forward out of the Spirit, Lucifer did not agree. And we'll call him a he, but he basically said, no, my plan's a good plan. My plan is the right plan, and I'm going to continue to implement my plan. And so,
when Lucifer insisted on implementing his plan, you may be familiar with this biblical quote, the dragon's tail swept down a third of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth.
That's from the book of Revelations.
A third of the stars, a third of the angels. What happened is those angels who fell under Lucifer fell into a negative consciousness, as you see below. Even many of the archangels fell, and even some of the great archangels fell. And of course, Lucifer fell.
Important to understand when we're talking about a fall, it's not a fall in the normal sense that you're thinking of. What it is that those consciousnesses entered into creation in a different way. And they became involved in the fabric of creation in a way that would allow them to have an influence upon it. They had to get more engaged to have more influence. And it was Lucifer's intention to have more influence upon creation and upon how evolvement took place within creation. See, Lucifer has a plan of salvation and a plan of where souls can go through creation and come out the other side and transcend. It's just his plan is a long, slow, difficult plan. So, but he's insisting on his way.
So when they fell, then the angels became just the pure ones. These are the angels that are not under Lucifer. This would include the angels. There were angels under Lucifer that did not fall. Not a lot. But you see, here's what to understand. Now, in angels, I said they're born in absolute surrender. Lucifer was their everything. Like their John Roger plus their Christ. He was everything. So to have that attunement, that discernment to choose away from Lucifer, to choose God, was very rare indeed, very rarefied, would take a very high state of evolution, and a loving that is hard to fathom. So there were not a lot that didn't fall, but there were some. Those are the ones that didn't fall again. Michael, Raphael, Gabriel. There are some lesser archangels, Uriel, Ariel, etc., that didn't fall, the ones that we hear about. There's others, many others that are not commonly known. We're in a lot of angels, so just ones who were just angels who didn't fall, because again, they were being the good soldiers. They were more than taught to take orders, but it'd be, I guess the best analogy I can get is if you're in a war situation, if you don't follow what your commander tells you, there could be death and a lot of it. So for those angels, they didn't perceive much choice, and we'll talk more about that in the next slide. But so there weren't a lot of angels under Lucifer directly that didn't fall, but very few. So these angels are under Christ. And there are many. Here's us. These, Lucifer, and all these below. And for those of you who can't see, it says Lucifer, sons of perdition. Those were the great archangels who fell. They've become the sons of perdition. The archangels who fell, archdemons, or Nagath.
The reason they're called the sons of perdition, in the Bible it often says, there is no sin that cannot be forgiven but that you deny the Holy Spirit. And there were those who were high enough in the Spirit that when it was made clear that the Father's will was truly for the Christ's plan to take precedence in creation, they were, in a sense, directly aware from God, from the Father, that this was God's will, and yet they chose to align with Lucifer, even though they had it from the Holy Spirit. So they're then referred to sometimes as the sons of perdition because they have put themselves in a very contrary position to the higher will. Now, not one soul will be lost, but these guys are testing that.
These here, in this fallen place, they do have influence here, as I'm sure we all recognize. The negativity does have influence here in manifest creation.
So one of the things in there is, at the top, there was a quote out of the book of Revelations which said, "And the dragon waved its tail, and a third of the stars of heaven fell." That's the initial action of all of them coming down. And then the next part of that quote says, "And cast them up, and he cast them upon the earth." His casting them upon the earth was then setting all those who followed him into this action into the earth experience, into the human experience, into the experience of manifest creation to then push his agenda. And so that's what this slide is telling you, is that from that level, beyond all the pitfalls and challenges that we have and the temptations that we deal with in creation, being under here, this was added to that was this other intent, which was then to make sure that people didn't find a shortcut through the process of evolvement or evolution as Lucifer had first put forward.
So the great news is that Christ also has influence here, obviously, or you wouldn't be sitting in this room or any of the rooms, the temples, the churches. So, and you see the important thing here is there is an area where the Christ has influence, Lucifer has influence, so it always comes down to who do we choose to serve. There's a biblical quote, "As for me and my house, I serve the Lord." As we've been talking, I'm sure Michael's been even more aware of of Lucifer, the negativity trying to come in, and it's just simply a choice. No, it's just God bless you, I love you, no fear, but it's just I serve the Lord. I serve the Christ. So it's simply it's what Jer talks about so much, where is your focus? Where is your attitude? Where is your identification, especially? Are you identifying with this or this? Well, of course, we all go back and forth. It's just where are we identifying in the moment, and then the next moment, and the next moment.
There is a fundamental negativity that has dominion over creation, that is given. When we come down here, the way to grow through the experience of life on Earth, we have to get involved in it. So it's like when you check into the planet Earth, it's like you stepped in a movie theater and they say, "Okay, put on your 3D glasses. And we're going to put on the surround sound, turn off all the cell phones, put on the dark light, and get submerged in the process." The consciousness that oversees that has different names, but the name I've often used is the name I first heard it by, is often called the call power. That's how they refer to it in India. And so it, in a sense, is just the game master of the experience of the human condition. It's the game master in creation that is testing us to say, have we learned what we came to learn? And inevitably, through that process, people grow and evolve and work through it. So it is the tempter. It is the one that brings the challenges, the temptations, to try and keep us here as long as it can. That's the way it's set up. That's allowed. However, within that same action, there was a plan of salvation or a plan of exit, which called eventually you get out. And Lucifer really originally set that into creation as well, called eventually you get out, you finish. Except within the way it was set up, it became almost impossible. Not impossible, but it became so much more difficult than it needed to be. And so when we talk about the negative power, there is the call power, or there's a lot of different names for it, but it's just the basic tempter of, will we get lost in the process of this level and stay lost? It's like the better the movie is, the more we get in. But if left to our own devices, if we went and saw the same movie over and over again, we'd eventually say, I know this is just a movie. I've seen this before. And so we would eventually exhaust the experience level. Okay? So this is inevitably what will happen if we were just left to our own devices. However, that's long and tedious as well. And with Lucifer then comes in and amplifies that to keep it going even longer, to make sure we don't take a shortcut. See, Lucifer is not really opposed to evolution and progression. He's opposed to the way it's working under Christ, which we'll get into, because that is the big difference. So the negative power, depending on how you look at it, could be anything that opposes you and stops you. One of the things that John Rogers said once that I think really summarizes this, he said that evil is unnecessary experience. And that was the big thing. That was the big limitation of the Luciferian plan. The way it's set up and the way it locks you into karmic balancing, it keeps you in a lot of unnecessary experience.
I'm just a little lost on the idea that that Lucifer chose this, because you mentioned that the angels have no choice. They are born in the consciousness of God. So how could Lucifer have chosen such a powerful thing?
In the beginning, when they're first incepted, they have no choice. They have no choice for quite a while in their evolution. As they evolve, then they develop an awareness of choice. So Lucifer had an awareness of choice, very much so. The archangels had more of an awareness of choice than the angels. The great archangels had as much awareness of choice as we have. Lucifer certainly had an awareness of choice, and he chose. And God gives us free choice.
See, he talks about the angels start with awareness of God, but they don't have awareness of other. And as they progress and get higher, they gain that awareness of other and the choice that comes with that. Thus, they could be co-creators with God. Whereas we start with that awareness of other and the co-creatorness, but we forget that we are one with God. So we wake up by becoming aware of God, and their evolution is becoming aware of other. So we kind of come to the same place.
Have we all been angels? And are all of us here from the angelic realm?
Not all of us here are from the angelic realm, which, by the way, is not higher or lower. As we know, it's a parallel universe. The vast majority here are from the angelic kingdom. It's a lot more from the angels than were never in the angelic kingdom.
Are we focusing on angels because that is our origin?
You were focusing on it to understand what's going on.
Okay.
That's the important thing, not about the origin or this or that. For some souls went through the angelic expression, then came into the human. Other souls just came directly into the human. But regardless, it's just to get an understanding of what the game is we're playing.
You see, here we are. We're influenced by this. We're influenced by this. Did many of us, most of us, the vast majority, have the origin in the angelic? Yes. Were most of us involved in that Luciferian fall or not? Yes. Is it relevant to us? Absolutely. Do we stop here? Absolutely not. Please keep going up into the Lord. This is part of going on up into the Lord. Part of it will be you'll recognize where your involvement was and sacrifice that and forgive it and move up. And part of it will be you'll recognize how you're at the influence of this and sacrifice it and move up.
Is there a way for us humans to be of service to all the angels?
You can always send light to anywhere, and love and light, and put your intention to love and light to the work of the Spirit, the work of Christ, the work of angels, the work of, just like we send the light and the work to the work of the Spirit on the masters on this earth, to John Roger, to all the work of the ascended masters, whatever that you feel called to lend your focus of love and light, your consciousness can have an effect.
The value of this goes well beyond the words. Well beyond the words. So do you have to really understand exactly what we're talking about? No. It's really some part of you does. And so I would just say, if it doesn't all make sense, please don't worry about that. This is, again, the dragons, this is our quote, swept them to the earth, right here where we are. Not all of them, obviously. So this is just to show you that how high their perception of choice was. So Lucifer had a very high perception of choice. The greater the perception of choice, the much greater the fall, because they knew better. These angels, so Lucifer fell very far. The great archangels fell very far. Sons of perdition, archangels fell far. Now these angels, these are the ones we're talking about, the newer ones. They don't have that. They're one with the will of God. So did they have any perception of choice? Yes, but to choose out of that would have been very, very challenging. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it'd be kind of like tantamount to a soul coming to earth for the first time, just sparked out of God and becoming a soul initiate in one lifetime. Pretty rare. So these guys didn't fall that far. Not a bad fall. So it's sort of similar, high perception of choice at the time of fall. So the degree of fall. Now we get a little more relevant to why we're talking about this.
One of the things that's happening is that there's these beings that fell. A lot of them have been starting to incarnate into the human expression. If Lucifer wants to have the most impact on what's going on here, in a sense, like a general in a battle, he's got to send his troops into action. And to get really into the front line, the most front line is to take on human form. So a lot of these fallen beings have been incarnating into the earth. And so what this is reflecting is that when let's say the ones that had the greatest fall, one thing that happens, they tend to be very powerful and magnetic, because you've got to remember, they were very lofty angelic beings before they fell. So when they incarnate into physical expression, they often come in very powerfully magnetic, but they also come in with a great darkness. Remember, evil is unnecessary experience. So they are people who bring a lot of unnecessary experience onto the earth. These are examples, like we have Hitler, Stalin, this guy Jim Jones, who had 900 people drink cyanide laced Kool-Aid. When a lot of times these beings that are doing this, have a great power to them, and thus they're very influential over people.
Where they fell would have a great influence on where they come into and the degree of fall. And you get below that, then you get into Satanism, witchcraft. We clear these things still. Either we were at the effect of it, or we participated, or both. Usually it's both. And then it goes sociopathic and psychopathic behavior, like murder, rape, going down into conscious, vicious, hurtful behavior, emotional and physical abuse, where you're consciously trying to hurt another. See, it's all about how conscious are you of it, and about choice. Less hurtful, like conscious negative influence, like curses, implanting, wishing harm, that sort of thing, where you just think, why do they have that and I don't? It's not fair. I wish they didn't. And, something goes out from us when we do that. So it behooves us to stop that and to redirect. And then it just goes down to dark thoughts and feelings. Now, you've heard JR say we're not responsible for the thoughts that come into our head. We're responsible for the ones that we hold, that we keep nurturing, keep focusing upon. So that's not nearly as much under the influence of Lucifer. Okay.
These are the 7 deadly sins: pride, envy, gluttony, lust, anger, greed, and sloth. These are just part of what we all come in with as temptations when we take the human form, manifest creation. So this is what, just if there were no Lucifer, none of these negative angels, we'd all deal with this. Next slide. But then when Lucifer comes in, is he amplifies these. And so it becomes, you know, the old cartoon when you were kids, you see the thing where the little boy sitting there and a little angel on his shoulder says, "Don't do that." And the little devil comes on and says, "Go ahead, it'll be great." So what's happened is that the game of life in itself is challenging enough in dealing with these things, but then you've got someone else coming in and pushing like a cheerleading squad going, "Go, go, go." From the spirit world, we've had, out of Christ, we've had the angels, these angelic forces that are here promoting us this. Now, they can't choose for us once we're in the human expression, but it's almost like as a counterbalance of this, from the Christ action, we're getting this. We're getting the compassion, the empathy, the charity, the loving, the kindness, the caring, the gratitude, and other positive traits that are encouraged within our consciousness. So just as we have the negative cheerleaders, we have the positive. And this is going on all the time. All the time. In the end, though, it's our choice. We make the choice. However, in a sense, by counterbalancing with the Luciferian thing, is it makes it a clearer game, a freer choice.
And that's the value too. In the moment, what you choose to go, I don't have to be at the effect of the negativity. I can consciously choose towards the light. And the next moment, it's a continual conscious choice. But again, that's where the growth is. Thank God for Lucifer and for the negativity, because it seeds in us tremendous growth. As you sow, so shall you reap. You are bound to creation until the resolution of your karma. This is Lucifer's plan. Okay, here's your karma. You murder, you're murdered. You steal, things are stolen from you. You rape, you're raped. Let's say you murder somebody 48 times, then you get to come back 48 times and be murdered. This is the block of your karma, this whole block. And that's Lucifer's plan. Now, Lucifer was all about evolution. It's just a very slow, rather painful plan. You rape 48 times, you get to come back and be raped 48 times. That's the law.
An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a hand for a hand, a foot for a foot.
That's the law. Then we have the Christ plan, grace. As you learn and make loving choices, you gain absolution from unnecessary experience. And here's where we start to talk about unnecessary experience.
Do you understand when it says absolution from unnecessary experience? That doesn't mean you still don't work out the karma, but you work out the karma as much as you have to. Once the learning takes place, the other possibilities come forward.
So here's the Lucifer. This is all still your block of karma, okay? This is also your block of karma. Now, in the Luciferian plan, you would work out all this block of, maybe it's, 6 million lifetimes. Okay, now, under grace, you're here, you're murdering and being murdered, you're stealing and being stolen, and you're having a good old time, except you're not really having a good old time. So, under grace, you murder, and then you're murdered. Some part of you, now under Lucifer, where you learn is you stop murdering because you finally figure out that you're going to then be murdered. So you stop doing those bad things because those bad things will be returned to you. Well, that's a certain degree of evolution. Under grace, you stop murdering because you start loving. Let's say you're murdered, or you're at the point of when you're being murdered, rather than going, I'm going to get them back next lifetime and I'm going to wreak my vengeance. It's enough. I don't want to kill anymore. Enough. I don't want to harm anymore. And even though you could justify and go, well, they did it to me, you go, enough. I could do it. I have a free shot. I'm not going to. So as you start making those choices, Christ says you're learning. You're learning to love. It's loving choices. It's not like you get to just do that one lifetime, but for however many lifetimes until you've learned to love. Then what's presented to you is grace. You get a shortcut, as it were. And you get to work out your karma with alternative resolutions. You still need to work out this block of karma. So one possibility is to work with spiritual masters, JR, Jesus, spiritual masters who then can inform you and teach you and assist you to work your karma. So you don't have to keep doing the dreams. I would sure as heck rather be murdered in my dreams than be actually murdered. So it might be that, as Michael, for those of you who read the newsletter, it's like maybe you just have a really rough couple weeks where it's like, God, I'm not sleeping well and I'm being murdered and raped and pillaged in my dreams. Well, you may have just worked out 20 lifetimes in your dreams. A lot nicer way to work it out. Next one. Work on other levels, of course. Astral, causal, mental, etheric, soul. You're working it out on other levels. Maybe you just walk around and you can't stop thinking about, really dark thoughts, and it's like, what is wrong with me? Why am I fantasizing about, taking that guy out? I mean, you're working out things in the imagination, in the astral. Maybe you just feel really lousy, the emotions. And then certainly as you soul travel and you have different experiences, I'm sure we've all had that. If you've traveled on the other realms, you're working it out there rather than having to work it out physically. So there's a great expediency there. One lifetime, and you might be working out many, many, many lifetimes in one lifetime. Spiritual healing, consciousness clearing, working with someone like a JR or Michael or someone who can work with your consciousness to help you recall those past lives, but only to recall the minimum that you need to clear it and move forward and say, yes, I recognize that, I forgive it, and move forward. God is love, and he who abides in love abides in God, and God in him. This is the Christ action. The fall took place because beings were not informed. The more we are informed, that's why we're doing this, the more we are empowered to choose. Neither Lucifer nor God bind us to fulfilling the law. It is we who hold ourselves to it. When we choose to love regardless, Lucifer's influence ceases. It's easier to make that choice as we clear core karma. And remember, we are born of the opportunity for God to fall in love again as we freely choose love. At that moment, we resurrect through the grace and fall into the waiting arms of Christ.
The Bible alludes to a new covenant, a new Jerusalem, a new age. It is referring to this opportunity of grace being known by and partaken of by many rather than few. This is the time into which we are moving. Hallelujah, the kingdom of heaven is at hand.